Action!
Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Grudge Report. You'll notice that I am not the lovely Beth Johnson, but Beth likes Star Trek and I like The Expanse. So I'm here to help talk about the Expanse series and, of course, the latest episode 1 of season 5. My name is Margaret Reeb, and I'm a member of the development team at the SETI Institute. And I am joined, as always, on the Grudge Report by Franck Marchis, who requires no introduction, but I will introduce him anyways. He is a senior astronomer at the SETI Institute and chief scientific officer at Unistellar, and prefers to be referred to as Your Majesty. Hi, Franck.
Hi, Margaret.
How's it going?
Thank you for saying that.
Yes, of course. Well, like I said, we're here to talk about The Expanse. Season 5 just dropped the first 3 episodes on Prime Video. So we're really excited to dive into the details. I must say that we are going to spoil everything from the series to date. So everything that's happened, the world, the plot, the betrayals, the intrigue. So if you haven't seen The Expanse yet, pause, go watch it, get caught up, and then head on back here. So I think I've spent enough time to give people time to log off if they don't want to be spoiled. So, Franck, I think since this is the first episode, maybe we should spend some time talking about the world itself, kind of what's happened in the Expanse universe so far, dive into the events of the episode. What do you think about that?
Yeah, let's do this. Let's talk about the kind of the overarching story and the world.
Cool. Well, at a super high level, the Expanse is set in the future when humans have started to colonize the solar system. And of course, we have Earth and Luna, the moon. That's one entity. And then we have a colony on Mars, the Martians, and they've recently declared independence. So there's a little bit of animosity, a Cold War between Earth and Mars. And then the third group we have are the Belters. And these are the folks that are born and raised in the asteroid belt or on the moons of the outer planets. And they primarily mine for resources or they grow food. And so they generally feel taken advantage of because they have to pay a lot for air and water. And they're kind of living in poverty, even though they are supplying so many good things to the inner planets. So those are the major players. Maybe we should start with Earth. Franck, what are some of the things going on with Earth and the moon?
Yeah, so Earth in 2350, that's the year, if I remember. It's governed by United Nations. There is no more countries and states. It's basically a big entity with big government. So when you see Earth, you recognize the planet. There is still water, and the continental plates are identical, of course, because nothing really changed in 300 years. But you notice also that the level of water raised significantly. So we have cities surrounding by gigantic wall to protect them against the ocean water. And this is probably due to climate change, I'm assuming. And we also have some very strong political and economical issues on Earth. One of them is the overpopulation. Earth has a lot of inhabitants and not enough job for everybody, and the poverty is extremely high. So cities seems to be kind of some large part of them become kind of campment for homeless people, kind of homeless people of the future. It's not an Earth that I would like to see in the future, but it's the reality.
It's a bleak picture.
Yeah, it's the reality of basically exacerbating what we are doing from the present to the future. It's what's going to happen if we don't react on climate change and if we don't take strong political decision on the economical system, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting that the show itself, I haven't read the books, but the show doesn't really go into what is required to send people into space, because you would think that due to some of the overpopulation on Earth, more people would go to Mars or more people would go to the belt. They don't really explain that, but they also do a great job of painting kind of how hard it is to leave Earth, right? The Belters have problems with their bone density. The Martians don't have an atmosphere. So there might not be another good option for some of the people on Earth.
Yeah, so the show said that a lot is The Belters cannot stand the Earther, because they say they had a garden and they paved it, which is exactly
Mhm.
what we are doing. In fact, they had an amazing
Yeah,
planet and they basically did not take care of it. So the Belter kind of think like those people are crazy, and when they see themselves in the rush, in the difficult situation they live in, for them, Earth is a luxury: atmosphere, water, and infinite supplies of atmosphere and water. So that's one
yes.
of the reasons we
Yeah,
have
and
this contradiction. Go ahead.
yes. And no, it's interesting because another contradict brought to mind for me, this Christian who is one of the main earthers that we follow. She's the Secretary General of the UN. One of her mantras, you might say, is Earth comes first, which is interesting because she's talking about it in a military sense, but it's clear from what's happened on Earth that they haven't put the planet first at all. They've kind of run it into the ground, at least from what it had been. Climate change might have taken hold, and there's a really tough economic situation happening. So
Yeah,
maybe we should talk. Oh, sorry, Franck, do you want
and
to go, or do you want to talk
we
about
should talk
Mars?
about Mars, because Mars is an extraordinary world, I think.
Well, what about this Mars colony is extraordinary to you?
So Mars is a new country, the equivalent of a new country, where people moved because they have a desire to do something, achieve something remarkable. And what they want to do is to terraform the planet, to make it habitable, to make it like Earth. So terraform a planet like Mars is not an easy task. So Mars is very cold, far away from the sun. There is not that much energy coming from the sun. Mars has no magnetosphere, so no protection against radiation. And there is water on Mars, but the water is mostly on the pole, and we think there is water underneath the surface. So the Martian seems to be living mostly into those kind of caves, or they dig into mountains. I'm not really sure, 100% sure about exactly what we see here, but they seems to have digged somewhere, and they live under this crust of rock to protect themselves against radiation. And from time to time, they go on the planet and do what they need to do on the planet, which could be mining or exploring the planet. For one of the moment in the show, the son has a field trip and is going to check for the ice pack of Plenum Boreum, which is an area of Mars. So I noticed that they use names of places that exist on Mars. So that's the situation of the Martian in the first 4 seasons. And then maybe you want to talk about what happened after during the 4 season specifically, and what changed.
I'd love to talk about that. I do have a question for you first, though. I mean, do you think that terraforming Mars is a lost cause, or do you think that it's possible? Do you think it's a good investment to send people there to try and terraform
Well, if you don't have any other planets to go to visit,
it?
terraforming Mars is probably the easiest thing to do if you want to live on a planet with liquid water. And that's the problem we have in the 4th season. I'm going back to what I wanted to talk about, because in the 4th season, suddenly these people have access to an entire universe or galaxy. I will say galaxy because I think they stay in the galaxy. What happened in the 4th season exactly?
Right. It is. It is. We'll talk. I mean, these questions interplay with each other because what happens in the 4th season is the protomolecule, which is a substance that the characters have been trying to learn more about through most of this series as a whole, turns on this system of rings or portals to distant planets. So now, instead of having the hard task of trying to terraform Mars and living in these really tough conditions, people have the option to hop on a ship and go through a ring and end up at a planet that has liquid water, has an atmosphere, might be a little chilly, but a parka can take care of that. You're not going to turn into a popsicle when you walk outside. So what we see in especially this first episode of the event is there's a mass exodus from Mars. There are a bunch of for rent signs and vacant storefronts, and this colony is really at a state of crisis. So that's an interesting thing to think about is, if we had opportunities, where would we go as a human race, probably the places where we could live without having to put a lot of work into it.
So to go back to the Martians, so what happened is that they had an anti-economy, an anti-political system based on the terraformation of Mars. And they were trying also to become a military power against the Earth, against Earth and the Belters. But then suddenly they have access to all those planets. So of course people say, I am not going to go to live in a cave and wear this outfit every time I want to go out. I want to be in a place where at least I can breathe outside and see natures. So they all go to, they leave the planet and try, most of them leave the planet to go to become extra, I don't know, it's not Belter anymore. It's like exoplanet explorer. And there is even ads in the
Yeah, I was gonna say, you see the ad in the Martian subway,
and you can see what they're trying to
so they
get
can go
is
be an
the smartest.
exobiologist.
They're trying to get the smartest people, the engineers, scientists, because there is all these new worlds to explore. So of course, all these people will leave the Mars to go there. So it's a collapse of an entire economy, because as soon people start leaving, of course, there is less people to feed. There is less. This is a capitalistic system they're using, so this is an entire collapse. And there is the scene where he's looking up and he see all these stores closing down or about to close.
I do want to do a quick shout out to the cowboy bar that they had on Mars, because I thought that was do appreciate that. They do a very good job in the show of making the different places feel alive and real with their own characteristics. But I will say one of the things about this show that has always sort of seemed a little off was that Mars and Earth would be at odds. I would think that if you were a colony where you didn't have air or water, you would probably want to have good relations to the place that you came from. But it wouldn't be as exciting if Mars and Earth weren't at each other's throats.
Yeah, and the Belters are providing Mars with water and air.
So could you talk a little bit more about that? Because it is interesting to me, this idea of mining asteroids. What would you find if you mined an asteroid?
So if you mine an asteroid, it depends on the type of asteroid you are mining. We have some asteroids, which are, people will talk a lot about those, so we're gonna talk about them first. We call the metallic asteroid. They're made of metals. And we have seen very large one. One of them is 216 Cleopatra. I know this one because there's 2 moons that my team discovered, so we studied this one a lot. And it's a metallic asteroid. It has a density of between 3 and 4. So that's really dense for a body which probably is porous. NASA is going to send a mission called Psyche in 2021, probably 2022, and it's going to explore one of these metallic asteroids, also called Psyche. So it's easy. The name of the mission is the name of the asteroid. So we're gonna know more about those asteroids soon. But most asteroids are in fact what we call C-type asteroid, carbonaceous chondrite-like asteroids. So they're made of a very fragile material. They're dark material. You probably heard about the mission that brought back samples from the Hayabusa 2 mission. He landed on the asteroid Reeb, took some sample. Well, he didn't land, but kind of. I'm simplifying here. They basically sent a projectile, exploded, and it stays over it and open a system and get all the dust in and close it. That's the way it happened. It was not like a real landing per se. But anyway, and then brought back the samples to Earth. So for the first time, we are going to know the composition of a C-type asteroid, which are 70% of the asteroid in the main belt. We don't know what, we think there is some with a lot of water, some without water, some with organic material, etc., etc. And then we have what we call the S-type asteroid, and those are the silicate asteroid. They're made of mafic material, so orthopyroxene, all of this stuff that you find on Earth with a crystalline structure. And those are the rocky asteroid. But this is a big picture. But then in each asteroid, there is probably some material which are more interesting. So what I call interesting, well, if you live on space, what you want is water, because if you don't have water, you're not gonna stay long. because with water you can produce as well oxygen, the air that we need to breathe. So they need that. And also, if you want to have an entire economy, you need to basically develop mining. And in this case, you don't mine water only, you mine also the rare metals inside the asteroid. So those are useful. Right now, we use them a lot for our technology. In your cell phone, you have them. In a lot of new products, you have these rare metals. And there will probably be more and more need for them in the future. So asteroids are kind of an infinite source of this material. And that's one of the reasons we already started thinking about how we can mine asteroids. Because people have been thinking about technology to do this. So it's not science fiction per se. It's already starting.
Yeah. And so the Belters are probably getting all their bang for their buck whenever they go to an asteroid, right?
Yeah.
To fuel weapons or technology or life.
In the show, sometimes they talk about the biggest asteroid, like there is Ceres, which is the largest in the main belt, which seems to be hollow, kind of. They dig into it, maybe not entirely, in some area, to kind of stations. She's going to, I forgot the name. She's going to Vesta.
Naomi?
Yeah, Naomi. She's going to Vesta to find the sun, for instance. So those big asteroids, the largest one, used as kind of mini worlds for inhabitat. And they probably use the fact that there is other asteroid not too far away, smaller, to mine them. Because it's very easy for them. That's something also they need to realize. If you're a belter and you live on the main belt, it's much easier for you to go to mine asteroids than being on Earth, on Earth or on Mars. Because every time you're on Earth or on Mars, you have to escape from the gravity of the planet first. If you're on an asteroid, the gravity is very small, so it's easier for you to go outside to explore and to mine other asteroids nearby.
Yeah, there's another interesting thing that happens in the first episode of the 5th season that involves gravity, and it's the first shot that we even get. It's the first maybe 5 minutes, where we have the asteroid, Rock 197 or something to that effect, that is hurtling towards the sun. And it gets pretty darn close, and then it breaks apart, and parts of it kind of slingshot back the way that it came. So how is that how does gravity impact objects like that?
So probably what they did, they sent the asteroid, but not exactly toward the sun, but slightly off. So what you see in the first scene is basically the asteroid coming very close to the surface of the sun, the photosphere. So you can see all the filament of the photosphere, which is beautiful. Of course, getting warmer and warmer when you come close to the sun, and the gravity is also very strong. So this has a final effect of disintegrating the asteroid in fragments. But the asteroid is not impacting the sun, it's basically going around it. And by going around it like this, it basically gains speed. We use that, as you mentioned, that's a slingshot orbit. And we use this in solar system exploration when we want to send a spacecraft in the outer part of the solar system. We use Venus or Earth as a slingshot. And sometimes we use like 2 or 3 of those planets. So after this, the body escape the sun and goes away from the sun and end up passing by a station which is in orbit around Venus, sorry. So first time we see scientists, and they don't last long, unfortunately. Maybe you can tell what happened.
Yeah, it was kind of a bummer. Well, they spot the debris from the asteroid, and they're very curious about it because it didn't really appear on anybody's radar. And then when it broke up, it's sending odd signals that don't make very much sense. And then some OPA folks who are not very nice show up on the science ship, take their logs essentially, and execute the crew. And so it's not quite clear what's going on, but it's pretty clear that they just were doing some sort of test with their asteroid projectile, or maybe the asteroid got off course and they don't want anybody knowing about it. So that's sadly what happened. I hate it when a scientific mission gets caught up in interplanetary warfare, but I think that's what happened here.
Yes, so they mentioned that when they analyze the rocks, they notice that there is something weird in it. We don't really know, but it's probably related to the technology that they have been using to divert it or to hide it, to
Yes.
make it invisible. Uh,
Yes.
and apparently, this is a technology that's going to be used by this terrorist group in the
Yeah.
next episode. We're going to know more.
Yes, that's the end of this first episode, right? We get a close up of our villain, Marcos, and he seems to have a bunch of asteroids that are cloaked, hurtling through the solar system, which is a terrifying prospect.
We see a lot of word in this show, in this first episode. I just realized we see also the moon, the station on the moon.
Oh, and it might be the first time that we've really spent a lot of time on the moon. What were your first impressions of the station?
So I like when the spacecraft land. He land a little bit like the Apollo mission did, or others, or the Chang'e 5, for instance. It's the same, like this trajectory. It's beautiful. That's one of the shots I took from with my phone, in fact, because I wanted to show this during the video, during this in this video, because I think it's kind of nice to see the moon like this and the station. So I think that's all for me for the science. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
Well, I think when we talk about the structure of the story, it's interesting because this is the first time in the entire series that a lot of the characters are out forging their own paths. Like I think we mentioned earlier, a lot of the series so far has been everybody trying to scramble to prevent the proto-molecule from destroying planets and wiping out humanity. And so now we get a little bit more of the personal stories of each of the characters. And I also, as a science fiction nerd, just love the prospect of being able to travel to a bunch of different worlds. And I hope that we get to see some of these other planets that are on the other side of the ring. And of course, learn more about the proto-molecule, but maybe we'll get into that in the next episode. Who knows?
Yeah, in the next episode, we spend some time talking about the gates, also the propulsion system that they use to explore the solar system, which is very interesting. Yeah, there's an entire episode explaining how this was invented. It's an amazing, most amazing episode I think we have seen. And of course, the proto-molecule. So we're gonna talk about this in the next episode. We have how many episodes total? I mean, it's gonna be 12, something like that.
Yes, I know there are 3 out right now, so there's plenty of material ready for anybody who's interested to keep watching. Thank you so much, Franck, for breaking down the science. Thanks to those of you who watched. We are part of the SETI Institute, which is a nonprofit research institution whose mission is to explore the origin and prevalence of life in the universe. So if you like The Expanse, you'll probably be very interested in all of the things that we do at the Institute. So if you want to stay informed, you can click any of the buttons at the bottom of this video to subscribe to our YouTube channel, get our newsletter, follow us on Facebook, and of course, because I'm part of the development team, I should ask you, if you are so inclined, to go to seti.org/donate. And if you have $5 or $10, the Institute would very much appreciate it. So thank you for tuning in.